thank you again for coming today. I know folks have a lot on their plates and there's a lot of demands on your time. And this is also important to all of you. So for folks I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Tatiana Hernandez. I'm the CEO of the Community Foundation Boulder County. It's lovely to see some familiar faces tonight, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to answer as many of your questions as we have, or as you have, and just give you a quick update on where we are with the fund. And Hannah's going to take us through to the next slide. We hope. There we go. Okay. So again, we'll mostly spend our time today in Q&A. I know you have a lot of questions. We want to make sure we leave time for those questions, but we'll really quickly walk through where the fund is currently and talk about Rebuild Fund, unmet needs funding, provide you some more information or new information on how you can apply for both of those resources that are available. And then we'll go a little bit into the considerations the foundation's taking into consideration, things that we're thinking about moving forward and that we're just watching. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but things that we're watching as concerns that we have that the community may have needs moving forward. And then we'll go into Q&A. First, before we get started, I just really want to thank Raina Pomeroy, Tim Crean, all the folks at Marshall Together. They've been phenomenal partners over the last year. Many of you in this room have reached out to us and given great feedback. All of that has been heard and certainly incorporated into the decisions that the foundation's been making and helping to inform how we think about the needs of this community. So thank all of you. Next slide, Hannah. Great. So generally speaking, when you look at the fund, it's very, very clear. Priority, of course, was rebuilding. We heard loud and clear from this community last spring. It feels like a very long time ago. Underinsurance was the #1 need in the community. And everybody, over 80% of folks in those initial surveys were saying, we want to rebuild, we want to rebuild. Please, please, please help us to get there. Obviously, there's not enough money for us to cover the entirety of people's gaps, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we did what we could to make sure that the most of you would be eligible for support to some extent, and that we provided deeper supports for folks who may have additional needs. So I'll reiterate, and I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, the Rebuild Fund, everybody who has an insurance gap gets $20,000. And then depending on a series of risk factors, whether you're low income, whether you're an elder, whether you have children in the home, single head of household, et cetera, there are additional funds available for each of those different risk factors. We did the math. I think the total someone could get from the Rebuild Fund is around $48,000 if they met every single one of the risk factor criteria. Obviously, the needs of the most vulnerable, absolutely critical to us, wanting to make sure that no one is in a situation where they're homeless, living in their car, unable to eat, no clothes. That is a critical, critical need. And that's where the Unmet Needs Fund is really focused on, targeted to folks that are financially struggling to the extent to which that their basic needs aren't being met. Food security. Volume up. Okay. And then community services. And now, is that okay? Theater voice feels like I'm screaming in this room, but maybe that's because I've got 2 speakers in my face. And so community services, what does that mean? One of the first grants that we made was to United Policyholders. Has anyone participated in any of the United Policyholders? I think that was a pretty universally helpful. Great. So glad to hear that. We will continue to provide that support. We've made 2 grants to them, I think totaling over $300,000. We made sure that there were legal supports available through that, making sure that folks had people they could talk to for tax purposes through United Policyholders. Unfortunately, we've been through this before. We knew that that was going to be a critical need, and that's where really a lot of the funding that you'll have available to meet your needs is coming from. Another example of a community service, Resource Central, Garden in a Box. Has anyone picked up a garden from Resource Central? I see a couple of hands. We just approved today an additional grant to Resource Central for their Garden in a Box program. If you're not familiar with this, I'll go very quickly and describe it. Anyone who's rebuilding smoke and ash affected homes as well are included in this. You can get a free up to 200,000 square foot Water-Wise Garden from Resource Central. Their spring 20, no. Sorry, so did I say 200,000? 200. Sorry about that. I live in the world of many zeros. Sorry. 200 square feet, I apologize. 200 square foot garden. The spring 2023, that's the year we're in, is sold out. There's still some room, I think, in the fall program, but we're really ramping up spring of 24 and fall of 24. So for folks who are in the process and plan to have that be their dates for move-in, we just approved that grant today. So we're really excited. And again, that was a program that came from you all. We knew that it existed. Someone in the community said, hey, we know this program's out there. Would you guys consider supporting it for us? Of course. So that's a great example of a community service. Mental health supports, Boulder Jewish Family Services, or all of the mental health supports that were provided to BVSD for young people. We're very, very dedicated to that. And so if you have not reached out or you want to talk to someone, there's absolutely that support that's available. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so really quickly, to date, the foundation has raised over $43.2 million from over 82,000 donations. This is unprecedented in the state of Colorado, and it just an enormous testament to the care and love that this community has for each other. Folks are still donating. Just so you know, like every month, we just got a $50,000 check 2 weeks ago. And so I'm naming that to say we're still in this work with you. We know the needs completely outweigh even what $43.28 million can match or meet. But we're listening, and that's kind of where we are. Of that, we've distributed over $20 million. And we'll go through and how that has been distributed in a different slide. Allocations of over $34 million. Again, this is the big pot, right? $20 million for the rebuild fund. Over $7 million has been approved in grants that went out to folks, which is an enormous undertaking. And then I just want to be clear for folks, all of our funds are audited on an annual basis and they're publicly available. So if you're wanting to look at any of it, feel free. They're on our website. You're welcome to look at it. The other thing I would mention about what it means to be publicly audited is that as a foundation, every grant that we make is listed on our 990s. So you'll see the list of grants here. They're also listed on our website, and then you'll see them again on the 990s. So anyone who is curious and has a calculator can look at year on year what was raised, what was distributed, and it's of course year over year because these are annual things, and you can do that math. We're currently about to embark on our 2022 audit. That will be available in the fall of this year, 2023. Every single check that was written directly to survivors at DAC will be listed in our 990. So I'm giving you a heads up. You got a check from us. Your name and the amount will be listed publicly. Okay. Next slide. So we'll look at this a different way. Pie chart of everything that's been raised and what's been allocated. Obviously, the rebuild fund is almost half of that. This big chunk right here was the immediate financial assistance that was distributed in those first 90 days. That was $8.5 million that was allocated. I think about 7 million of it ended up being distributed. Anything that wasn't distributed goes back into the pot. Okay. We have about 7.7 7.5 million that's unallocated right now. A little bit that it is allocated but hasn't been distributed yet. So what does that include? That's the 2 million for the debris removal that we're still working through with the county in terms of what their gap is. And mental health supports. There's still about $500,000 in there for mental health supports. Unmet needs is another big chunk, 2.5 million for unmet needs. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Obviously, mental health supports, insurance navigation, that's the United policyholder stuff. A lot of the commemorative events that we just had at the 1-year milestone, those were funded by the foundation. What else? This other right now is actually almost entirely the Resource Central grant. it's a bigger slice of the pie at this point based on today's stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about interest on the fund in a second. So in the totality of things, over 84% of the fund is currently allocated for direct or indirect benefits to households. About 14% of it for services, United policyholders, mental health supports, garden in a box, all the things I just mentioned. And then again, that 2% foundation fee doesn't change. Next slide. Actually, go back. Let me, I'm only going to sit on this for a second because it came up as one of the pre-questions, so interest. The fund, or the balance of the fund, because much of it has been spent, distributed, the balance of the fund is currently invested in an ICS money market sweep. What does that mean? Two things. It's all FDIC insured, and it's getting about 4.25% right now. Every single dollar of interest is 100% allocated for distribution. Okay? Does anyone have questions on that? Okay. Did I see a hand? No, that's just next slide, please. Okay, all of this is on our website. The complete list of grants, both the allocation, what ended up getting spent, whether or not it's going to be reallocated back, all of that's on our website right now and has been for 3 months, 4 months. We update that, I don't know, once a quarter probably, based on distribution. But you're always welcome. It's the QR code to the page. Okay, so quick note on the rebuild fund. First and foremost, it is just astounding that our community is over 50% in the permit process or in the process of rebuilding. For content, it's huge. And I mentioned that, I know it's been a long haul. I know not everybody's in that position. The national average at this point in time is half that. So as a community, you guys have hustled. You've been incredibly diligent in doing the work you needed to do to come home. And I think that's really incredible. And so I credit you entirely for getting us to that incredible milestone. Over 300 grants have been approved. For context, there are 453 permits that have either been approved or in the process of being approved by all 3 municipalities. So this is tracking pretty consistently with permits. As permits get approved, our team, and that's a very broad statement, our team works directly with the assessor's office to have those permits get sent to IDF, who can then reach out and say, hey, do you want to apply? Again, over 7 million has been approved. So we're also tracking, and this is a question that we get asked pretty often. We calculated the $20 million, assuming that 75% of households will rebuild. We're at about 51% right now. So there's a little bit of space there, right? And folks have asked us, what happens if we don't hit 75? We'll probably reallocate that money to something else, right? If we go over 75, we'll allocate more money, no problem. That's why we're holding some funds aside, and we'll get to the funds that are unallocated right now. We are tracking the lots sold. By the way, that number is 6%. It's not much. It's like 67-ish lots, 65, something like that have been sold. I know there's way more on the market for a variety of reasons, but we're tracking it to see, okay, if that 6% starts to look like 25% or starts to look like 27%, we then can readjust on the assumptions, right? And we're tracking lots sold versus permits versus grant approvals, just to make sure that no one's getting lost through the cracks, okay? Now, one thing we wanted to mention today that I hope will be helpful to some folks, a number of folks, probably around the fall, around November, October, started to come to us and say, hey, we have smoke and ash damage and we basically are rebuilding our home. We were not unfamiliar with this situation. It actually is something that we experienced at the foundation. One of our staff members is a smoke and ash affected homeowner that had to take it down from the studs. And so in partnership with IDF, whose expertise is in home rebuilding or home building, I should say. We have together kind of come up with a series of criteria to basically say, okay, if these components, if these elements were affected in a smoke and ash situation, we're basically going to consider them as a rebuild. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan Ferguson, our partner at IDF, to walk through what that looks like.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Megan Ferguson. I'm the Deputy Executive Director over at Impact Development Fund. We are essentially the back office, right? Processing all of these applications and requests, honoring the guidelines and the intent and the criteria established by the Community Foundation under the Rebuild Fund, unmet needs. We're also working with the state and other partners to process applications. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you. Going to the next slide. Perfect. So to touch on and really build upon what Tatiana was leading to here with Rebuild, the set aside for smoke and ash eligibility, really looking at this set aside within that fund, within the $20 million fund, you know, how can we address substantial smoke and ash? Part of the criteria and coming up with a point system was really to gain some awareness around the scope of the damage that smoke, heat, and ash caused for the surrounding properties. We're also still looking at the financial gap. So going back to the difference between the cost of the repairs with the insurance proceeds that are available. Right now with insurance, you all know full well that negotiation process is very difficult. With smoke and ash, it is also very difficult because the home wasn't a total loss. And so what we're seeing is really very different criteria, depending on policyholders, depending on the insurance company around what they're willing to cover, especially around that coverage A, the dwelling policy. And so again, still looking at that financial gap, but looking at how much of the property needs to be rebuilt. What we're finding, just anecdotally, is that up front, there may have been insurance coverage for some of the cosmetic or surface level cleaning, maybe some siding repair. But now what is coming out over time is that the damage and the health effects are much deeper. And so really through those conversations over time, hearing what's happening with, you know, going back and forth with insurance, industrial hygienists, understanding the depth of the damage because of the heat, because of the ash, all of the systems that are affected, really working with the foundation to say there may have been some insurance money there, but we're still looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in these homes to bring them back to a livable condition. So coming up with a point system, it is not meant to be a scientific process. It really is about how much work structurally is needed, how much repair, how much damage was done because of the heat, the smoke, the ash. So we come up with the point system. Really, we're looking for a minimum of 5 points in any combination of repair items. So flooring, drywall, cabinets, windows, encapsulation. But then the 2 points around insulation, roof, HVAC, siding. What we're seeing is siding has melted underneath the siding. The underlayment is completely damaged. So it's not just about a couple of pieces of siding and then repainting, right? And the insulation, maybe it's just attic, maybe it's the entire house. I mean, some of the stuff Tatiana talked about down to the studs. We are absolutely seeing those cases. So as you can tell, really, even in just the 1 point categories, if you have to do these 1 point items, that's 5 items, right? So you're eligible for the rebuild dollars for smoke and ash. And then the 2 points, obviously, it just gets more and more cumbersome, the amount of the repairs, all all of that work through proposals and bids with contractors, really the same process as the rebuild fund. We're evaluating what the totality of that cost and effort is for smoke and ash affected. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And I want to point out, this is something that has been informed by community, right? You folks elevated the issue to us. We were trying to get a sense of, okay, what is the breadth of this issue? It is still one of the things that is probably the hardest to pin down. How many homes are we talking about? We're estimating, and you probably have seen the multiple articles on this. Some folks are like 10,000 homes might be smoke and ash affected. We think the number of homes that are in this level of effect is around maybe 200. So just to put that into context, what we were seeing through applications was that it was like a backwards bell curve. A lot of folks had smoke and ash damage that was under $10,000, and then it was over $100,000, kind of smattering in the middle of like the 40 or 50 grand. So this is how our process works. You all elevate an issue to us. We try to get a sense of how big of a scale the issue is and what's possible. So this is available now. Folks can apply now. Hannah, can we really quickly jump to the website if that's possible? No, the application website. Not very quickly. Okay, we'll work on that. Let's maybe go to the next slide. Thank you. And we can maybe do that at the end. So the unmet needs fund. The intent, the purpose of the unmet needs fund, again, focused on the most economically vulnerable, right? Folks that would have been homeless. That was so much. Apologies to everyone online. I hope you weren't wearing headphones. Sorry about that, folks. Oh gosh. Okay. So the unmet needs fund, just to remind everybody, we have $2.5 million allocated here. Again, estimates at the beginning, and these are estimates that we were working through with DOLA and folks that were on the ground. We were thinking it's about 100 households that might be in this very low income, really would have been affected pretty deeply economically. And the intent was to make sure people have a home over a roof over their head, they've got a bed to sleep in, they've got a car, some kind of transportation that will get them to where they need to go, that their medical expenses are paid if they need that, they've got food, they've got clothing, basic needs. So far, over $500,000 has been dispersed in this fund. Outreach is going to be made. IDF and CDP folks are actually going to reach out based on the contact list that we have from the DAC days to make sure no one has fallen through the cracks. Okay. So if you know of a family, like there's an application form that's also online. You no longer have to go through recovery navigation to access either of these funds, either rebuild or unmet needs. And Hannah's going to hand it over. Hopefully, yay, look at that. Oh, it was there and it wasn't. Can we give it up for Hannah? It's a lot of moving parts here, guys. Thank you so much. Has anyone been to this website before? Okay, it's CED project, cedproject.org/rebuild. So on this site, and let's scroll up a little bit. Keep going. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay, stop right there for a second. State Housing Recovery Program, Community Foundation Rebuild Fund. If you know you're not eligible for the State Housing Recovery Program, there is a shorter application that you can access directly for our rebuild funds. If you are eligible for the State Housing Recovery Program, you can apply with the full application and be eligible for both. Okay, one application eligible for both. I know that's, and I won't speak to that because I'm not an expert in the state housing recovery program. I know there were some questions around that, and I didn't see Dave or Natasha. Okay, but so that's step one. This is rebuild stuff. Let's keep scrolling. Then here's our unmet needs and ALE support program. Let me pause here for a second. You've got grant guidelines. This will include a standard price for things like appliances. So you can look and see, okay, I know I'm short on my contents or I desperately need a couch, a bed. These are the guidelines. Let me pause here for a second. At the 12-month mark, we were all very concerned about folks who had 12-month ALE running out. And we were basically holding to see, will DOI, will the Division of Insurance be able to get those companies to extend that coverage? They did for most of the companies. They did not for some. There's still some folks whose 12-month ALE ran out in December. And so for folks whose ALE has run out, we do have support for additional living expenses. It's currently capped at 6 months and it has an income cap, but that support is available. It's a small number. I can't remember the number right now. I'm sorry. It's a lot of numbers to remember. But we are treating that as part of the unmet needs fund for the moment. Okay. But again, if you know any families whose ALE ran out at 12 months because their insurance company didn't do that extension that the DOI was able to get for most folks, that support is available. And then you can apply. Again, directly you can apply. And we're going to scroll up. So again, you've got the rebate program here, and then you've got the county tax rebate on the bottom. So this is a pretty one-stop shop for all major kind of funding that is available. Okay. We will make sure that link gets in the chat for folks that are online, but for folks, oh, Eric already got it. Thank you so much. But for folks in the room, again, cedproject.org/rebuild. Okay, let's go back. Thank you. I think we missed a slide. Let's go back. Yeah, okay. So recovery navigators, of course, it's still available if you want someone to walk you through these applications, but the CEDP team, the IDF team, they're also available, and all of their contact information is on that website. Okay. So let's talk about moving forward. Oh, goodness. Okay, moving forward. So there's, again, we still think the rebuild fund is looking okay in terms of that allocation. We're getting about 10 applications for the rebuild fund a week. And that's wonderful. We're going to continue to monitor that through the summer. And I'm naming something that I think is important given this moment in time. So we are in April. 24-month ALE runs out in 8 months. Did I do that math right? Okay. Rebuilds take longer than 8 months. And so there's probably a group of people out there that are wondering, do I even bother to put a shovel in the ground right now because my ALE is going to run out in December? I'm definitely not going to be in my home right now. We have calculated what that number would be to support households for up to 8 months. It's about $7.5 million. Check my math. 7.3. We have 7.5 that's unallocated. Okay. So we are holding that unallocated money right now in the event that folks want to put a shovel in the ground today, knowing that they're not sure if the DOI is going to get extensions, if your insurance company is going to give you extensions. We want to be able to provide that security for folks as you're making a decision to say, I want to put a shovel in the ground, but I don't know that I can make that gap for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Okay. So that's our thinking right now on a vast majority of the unallocated funds that are available. Then there's still open questions about home hardening, right? Folks are really interested in metal fences or, help me, Rita, other siding. There's a million things in the home hardening world. I can't remember all of them. My apologies. That's also something we're thinking about. That's not kind of a primary get the house rebuilt sort of thing, but would be a nice to have if we want to have a little bit of fireproofing in our community. So that's also something that's on the table. And obviously we have about $500,000 still left that's allocated for mental health supports. And we're having a conversation with JFS a couple weeks, early May, to talk about what does the continuation of that program look like. Okay. So again, I promised you plenty of time for Q&A. And so opening it up to the floor, I'm going to ask again for folks that are online. This was our big challenge the last time, making sure that we speak into the mic so they can hear you and we can have a good conversation. Hi, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for a very informative preso so far. Since you were on the subject of DOI, kind of getting insurance companies to extend ALE, does anybody know, do you know, is there a list of which insurance companies have agreed to extend and which have not?
For 24 months or for the 12 month?
I guess I was thinking maybe both of those.
24 months, I think the answer is no. I think 24 months, it will probably be on a case by case basis for each of you to sadly, unfortunately, like duke that out with your insurance companies. For 12 months, I don't have that list, but I know the list exists.
Okay.
Yeah. And let me also be clear, taking a little bit of a risk in even saying that we're thinking about this, because if the insurance companies get wind that, oh, the community foundation's got money tucked away for this stuff, they're just going to deny it. And this was, again, the same thing with the 12-month ALE. We were trying not to get ahead of those dollars because it would be very easy for them to walk away. So I'm naming that to say, I want you to know that. I don't want State Farm to know that.
Hi, Tatiana. Hi. I just want to let you know that I'm part of a group of fire impacted people who are desperately looking for money for people to fire harden.
Yeah.
We're talking to DOLA on Friday, testifying the legislature tomorrow.
Great.
For grants.
Yep.
We've been looking at what it costs.
Pretty reasonable.
We think it costs a lot less than $30,000.
Yeah.
And ways to intervene and let people know maybe somebody will be coming late, hang on to that fence choice or whatever.
Yep.
So we would love to talk to you about that when you come to that.
Absolutely. And I agree. Thank you for doing that hard work and I appreciate it. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's much more reasonable than folks think. And I'd love to kind of scope out if we can figure out a way of like who's interested, what the average cost is so that we have a sense of what's the total cost. I mean, one of the things that's really important to us is to make sure that if we are saying we will support this, that there's enough money to support that for everybody, not just the first people who get there. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir. It's for the folks that are online, if you don't mind. Thank you.
The question I had to deal with like fraud. Has there been any experience with fraud, and are you guys have anything in place
Yes.
if you do find fraud?
Well, thank you for the question. It's a fantastic question. We have not experienced any fraud. And it is why we ask you for so many things. And I apologize for that. Truly, right? We ask you for your utility bills or to verify your residency. It's because we're checking that against the assessor's list to make sure you are indeed a fire survivor. So no, we haven't, amazingly, even at the DAC, which is fantastic because again, we were asking those questions at the DAC and the DAC, sorry, the Disaster Assistance Center. If y'all remember that, right? So no, we are not aware of any, and I've been looking, I've been keeping an eye for that. Yeah, Megan.
I just wanted to chime in really quick on the mitigation and home hardening as it relates to some of the stuff that DOLA's doing with their, the mitigation efforts. So again, they have the $30,000 potential addition on top of their funds if you're completing certain mitigation items. where it's really helpful right now, we're starting to collect that information. So we are starting to see, yeah,
It's a loan. Yeah, I think that's.
if
the-
it's, if you're under 120% AMI, it is part of the forgivable grant. Otherwise, it is on top of the traditional loan. Yes. Part of that to name for data purposes, as the foundation is looking at resources, as we're getting in the line item costs for those specific measures, that will help us build that, what are the costs? What are the true costs that we're seeing in the community for the cement siding?
Who isn't eligible for the grant?
And who didn't get the grant,
might-
and exactly. So it's all to say, even if that's ends up being something that you aren't eligible for through the DOLA process, having this information helps inform additional resources that may be coming down the road. So I just wanted to name that
I
for part
appreciate
of
that.
this documentation collection process. It's not for nothing.
Yeah.
It really does help inform what resources can come later. So
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. That's a good point. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming to our community and for all of your support. My question, if I may, is actually for Megan.
Oh, please, yeah.
My family applied for a DOLA grant application on December 28th, and we still don't have a response. Why is that? And when will I hear?
absolutely great question. Part of our process for looking at all of these applications, guidelines, changes to guidelines, the changes in some of the criteria, really in an effort to try to streamline that process, have been made really over the last 30 to 60 days. So part of our process in working through, one, all of the applications in the order that they were received, is now going back through and evaluating per changes and guidelines that were just recently rolled out by DOLA. So it's not to say that it's a long process, and we get that. I understand that. We are absolutely working as quickly as we can to make sure that we're reviewing applications with the intent of providing the maximum amount of assistance that's possible. And really, through having all of these applications, going back and advocating for what isn't working in the guidelines, that's where some of these changes came from. So I know, again, the changes just rolled out, I think, the end of March. And so they are for the better. It really changed the eligibility and qualification for a lot of the applications that were in process. It did then cause us to go back through and start that review process over again for the better. So I absolutely understand it's taking longer than any of us wanted. I am glad to see that through that review and underwriting process, we were able to find and look for things that could make this better. And we're reviewing applications with that new information that came out just 2 weeks ago. So we are starting to move through income reviews and then ultimately move folks into a funding stage. And we did get some template approval letters approved by the state just a few weeks ago. So things are moving. We're starting to work through exactly in the order that applications were received and getting that communication out to folks.
Megan's being really humble right now, folks, because no news is good news in the short term. I'm gonna bet, not knowing your situation, that per the original guidelines, it would have been a no. And their team's coming back to the state and saying, these eligibility criteria are too narrow. We need to make this work for people. So she's not telling y'all that, but I will say it on her behalf. Yes.
You had
Yeah, yep, sorry.
And I know that this is a new program. This is federal and state funding. We need to be transparent and efficient with public dollars. I get that and I fully support it, but it's very disconcerting to have so much uncertainty and to be waiting for months for an answer from you all. How many applications have you received and how many awards have been actually given?
We have 98 applications in review right now. I don't remember the exact numbers for approvals, but again, that is very recent in the last couple of weeks that we're starting to process those. And again, I'm glad because it's because of the changes and the streamlining in the applications that we're able to get approval letters out. So 98 applications, they're all in various stages of process, and we're automatically evaluating for both the forgivable loan and the traditional loan. Nothing has been awarded now. Nope. Not at this point.
That,
Thank you. Is there any deadline for applying for the DOLA loan or grant?
no deadline right now. And I'll offer this, folks. I mean, government money takes a long time, right? It's part of the reason the foundation came out early in the first, we made the announcement in May, to give some level of certainty and say, these are the most flexible funds that you'll ever see in an aftermath of an event like this. And it's not $50,000, but hopefully this can get people into the permit process, and get things moving. I'll also offer that it's been our experience thus far that when we make decisions to help expand, state tends to follow behind, which is great. And it just takes time. And have you heard of CDBG and CDBG-DR dollars? Folks that are really invested those aren't even allocated yet. Those aren't even out yet. Those are the federal funds. And this is why the national statistics are not great, because it takes more time than I think folks have. Sorry, question in the back.
I have a question about the permit grants. We believe that we do not qualify for DOLA. We exceed the AMI. Why is the DOLA application a requirement to get the permit grant? In a week or two, we will have a permit number. Why do I have to fill out that burdensome DOLA application to get the permit grant?
I'm not sure I know what you mean about a permit grant. Are you talking about the city, the county use tax rebate? For folks who have been through this, are you talking about the use tax rebate? Ours?
You don't.
You don't, yeah.
No, you can do the short form application to do the community foundation grant. Is that the one you're talking about?
Okay, I'm going to repeat your question just so folks online can hear it. So you want to make sure you can get access to the community fund rebuild application and you have a permit? Great. So that's all you need. Once you have the permit, you can apply. A lot of folks, frankly, started their applications before they had the permit. And just as soon as they had the permit, they added it and it was good to go. Oh, got it. Got it. I see what you're saying. At the beginning of the process, this was backwards. Sorry. So at the beginning of the process, the application form basically had all of the DOLA for our fund, had all of the DOLA requirements. And we heard loud and clear from members of the community, like, why are we doing that? And we were like, you're right. Then, okay. So this is a much shortened application form now. This is the one, CFBC Rebuild Grant Short Form Application. This is a much more streamlined, it will not ask you for your income, for example, unless you want to be considered for the LMI $10,000 add-on, as an example. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry that you're getting that information from them. You can go straight online and apply direct. So you don't need to go through the recovery navigators anymore. We're streamlining this process. The guidelines are, whoop. You're flipping through it won't let you go through, but just to show you what the application is. You can go straight onto the website, apply direct. And if you have questions, they can help you with it, but you don't have to go through the recovery navigators anymore. We're trying to streamline this process for everybody. Yes. Hi, Charlotte. Oh, wait, was there a follow-up over here?
Hi, thank you for being here.
Of course.
One of the questions I have is my husband and my husband's going to be retiring in a couple of years. So his income is going to drastically change from what it is now. Currently, we are out of the AMI guidelines. And so how does that look for people in that situation?
The AMI guidelines for the DOLA funds?
For the DOLA funds, basically for most everything that is offered, except for some of the grants, like after we get the building permit and that sort of thing.
I can't speak to that. I don't work for DOLA and Megan, if you can, yeah, okay. I wish Dave and Natasha were here.
I was gonna say I can, I just don't, I don't want to detract from community foundation.
No, it's fine. This is all, we want to get your questions
Great.
answered to the extent that we can.
So with the DOLA process, we're reviewing income at the time of application. So it is a snapshot in time. And that is again, part of the HUD and the federal snapshot of this is when we look at income. It is at the time of application. So we're not projecting forward of what might happen, in a year or two.
Thank you for the evening. We're senior citizens and have Social Security income. So what is the criteria for qualifying for the extra amounts? As we need it, we have to draw from our retirement funds. But our Social Security, of course, is consistent, and that's our only reliable funds.
Yep, I'm gonna ask Megan if you can remind me. I can't remember if it was 80 or 120. For community foundation funds, $10,000 add-on for low-income households.
For low to moderate income.
Thank you.
And then per individual over the age of 65, it's an additional $1,500 per person,
I think she's asking what
just on the AMI.
yeah, what's the income amount? It's per the
It's-
CHAPA.
It's the 80%
80%.
AMI.
So
And I
for a
don't have that
household of
exact dollar.
2, I don't have that exact number, but we can get
Yeah,
that to you.
we
For a
can get it.
household of 2,
You know what? I do have it. I'm sorry.
bless.
2-person, sorry, 72,000. And it is on the guidelines, which are on the website as well too.
So that will be on the website as well. So for a household of 2, if you make at or below $72,000, you will
Correct.
qualify for the $10,000 add-on. Whatever your income is,
Total income.
total income. Okay? Hi, Charlotte. Yeah, she's been waiting patiently.
Yes, thanks for this question and answer period, and I think this is for Megan. I have filled out the long form of the DOLA application, and in fact, today I just completed 3 more questions, which I think brings me up to a total application except for my building permit. At the last DOLA town hall, I heard someone say, maybe it was Dave or one of those other facilitators, that if you don't have your permit, you could still meet with a navigator and find out where, whether there's anything you can rely on from DOLA funds, whether it be a forgivable loan or what have you. This would be very important to eliminate any of this uncertainty about whether you could count on anything from them. How do you go about doing that? Because I sent an email to what I thought was, a navigator asking for an appointment. A couple of weeks ago, I haven't heard anything. What is the secret to getting into a navigator to at least find out basic information that might help you make plans.
Is that yeah, I hear a couple folks having that challenge. So maybe could you speak a little bit about the CEDP
Yes.
intake, folks? Yeah.
So, part of what I'll just clarify really quick, was it CEDP that circled back with follow-up questions and things through an application process? Because that is our intake partner. They're the ones that host that website. They are the group that on the tail end of receiving these applications, they're looking at the attachments that were provided. They're following up with additional questions. They are available by phone. They are live. They answer the phone. Right now, their wait time is under a minute. So that one phone number, you will talk to an individual when you call that CEDP number that is on the rebuild application page. They also are responding to emails. They've handled over 4,600 touch points in talking with folks just since they launched in December. So keep going. Yep. So on that rebuild page, you can call, text, email. There's a chat function on this page as well, where as you're there and you want to type in a question, they have live folks. Okay, perfect. I will get with you after to find out where the miscommunication is.
And if anyone's
Absolutely.
having trouble reading that number, it is 303-532-2785. Because I'm old, I'll repeat that, 303-532-2785. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Right here.
So I'm kind of frustrated, and my frustration is, I'm just like everybody else. I saved my shekels, my whole life so that I would have a decent retirement, as did my husband. And, we lived very simply. So we had a house. It was the least expensive model house in the neighborhood. It was nice inside. It had just been redone. Our insurance company gave us $366,000. To rebuild the house. You guys all know that that's not possible. So, what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to find this money? I mean, it's just like a joke.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'm so sorry this has happened for all of you. And there are no good answers. I wish we had a good answer. Everyone in this room is having to make really, really difficult decisions. And everyone in this room has suffered unbelievable losses. Disasters like this change lives. Our national infrastructure is not set up to really support communities in an aftermath like this. I'm gonna opine for a second. We need to do some serious work with insurance nationally, because these aren't gonna stop. They're only gonna get bigger. They're only gonna get worse. We're trying to learn as much as we can from California. They're struggling as well, but that does not help you in this moment. And I'm sorry, it's not a satisfying answer.
I'm being told that, well, you don't qualify for financial help because of your income. Well, that's sort of a joke. Our income is basically, we're taking money from our investments and we're getting that, allocated to us monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's being held against us. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are. You
Oh,
absolutely are. You've got a lot of folks in this room who are nodding their heads and who agree. It is an absolutely unjust, unfair, unwarranted situation. We are doing what we can with what we have. The gaps we're looking at after this event are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Easily up to $2 billion, right? That was the total loss. I think if we were to add up everyone's insurance payout, it might be half of that. And I want you to know, this is not an academic exercise for me. I grew up in Miami. I've been through more hurricanes than I can count. I've had to sorry. I have a very strong memory of being 11 years old and wading through waist-high water with a whatever chainsaw to help get a friend's family out of a bathroom. Because all 4 of them were stuck there with their dog with a mattress over their head because their entire house crumbled around them. And that was the situation for them 20 years ago. We talked about Hurricane Andrew. And there was no answer or solution for our community then. And it fundamentally changed the natures of our community. People left. People couldn't afford to rebuild. People lived in half-built houses for 15 years. I don't have a good answer for you. It is something that we as a society are not well prepared for, and our systems are failing us. We're doing everything we can with what the incredible generosity we've been given, but it's simply not enough to fill the gap for everybody. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
First, I would just say, definitely, I think everybody in the room feels the pain. We're all feeling exactly that way. And the one thing I was gonna say, it won't help any of us in this room at the moment, but the one thing that will help prevent this from happening again is House Bill 23-1240. It actually has teeth to prevent underinsurance in the future, and every one of us should be pushing as hard as we can.
Say the number one more time.
House Bill 23-1240.
Yes.
This is the thing that requires insurers to offer you guaranteed replacement cost policies. It requires them, if you choose not to do that, it requires them to offer you 100% building structure limit extension, which right now that would be a factor of 2 and how much money you got. That's a big deal. It would require the state insurance commissioner to provide homeowners and insurers with real estimates of costs to rebuild, which is the thing that insurance companies deliberately hide from you today by putting it on page 30 of your policy, right? These things are in House Bill 23-1240, and we all need to be getting behind making sure it passes so that we're not having this conversation again tomorrow and after every other disaster to come. No, it doesn't help us in the room today, but we should be trying to help prevent this from happening to other people in the future.
House Bill 23-1240.
23-1240.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I have a question about the unmet needs grant. On there, it says that they want to only give the money to vendors, which I totally understand because you don't want people to pocket money. But also a lot of those unmet needs are very basic and they can't wait.
Immediate, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just curious how you guys are accounting for that. Like if people need food, they have to borrow money and buy it today.
Yep, no, we've figured out a gift card solution. So if you have an immediate need, someone can approve that on spot and have a gift card emailed to you within the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Yes, follow-up question. Thank you for your patience with the microphone.
I'm gonna jump to something completely different here. I'm going into home hardening.
Okay.
And one of the issues, especially for many of the people who live along McCaslin Avenue, is we have matchsticks
Yep.
for fences. And there's a lot of talk about people wanting to put up some fire resistant fencing, whether they use hardy board or some kind of concrete fencing. The city is requiring people to kind of like jump through hoops and say, well, you gotta go through a PUD, you gotta get a requirement, you gotta, which I find kind of frustrating, because, you know, trying to get people, you know, people are already building, they're already building fences. What is there anything that on, I guess, whether you want to talk about the state and the government end, that says, hey, don't give these people a hard time, let them build something that'll resist the firing? Because right now we gotta get a group of people together to decide on how to build a fence.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I mean, I would offer this. Your local electeds have been pretty responsive, at least from our perspective, have been pretty responsive to issues that you've brought to them for consideration. And so I think this is a community that has done brilliant work in advocating for this. We can support you in that advocacy, but ultimately they're the decision makers, right? Whether that pressure comes from below, the sides, or above, all of that, I can tell you the Marshall Together team's pretty good at figuring out a multi-pronged strategy to get certain things changed to make it easier for everybody. But yeah, Rita, do you want to speak to that?
I know that Marshall Together is really passionate about this topic. It's something that's really important to us. There's the government aspect and like the legislation piece. There's also the funding piece. We have electrification dollars that have come from Excel and other places, right, from the state. And we don't have that for fire hardening. And what we're trying to do right now is attack it from that side as well, and saying, hey, we need some incentives, financial incentives for people to make the right choice. We don't have that right now. So we're really fighting. Tanya's nodding her head. She's been working really hard on this. And this is something that's very important to not just Louisville, not just Superior, for all of us, right? Like UBC included. And so it's something that we're thinking about, we're trying to figure out, and we don't have a solution yet. I know that we are all like purchasing things right now. Many of us have spent these dollars already. And so we're thinking about how we can make this happen quicker yesterday, you know, so.
So Raina, but I also heard Richard say that it's funding kind of, because it sounds like you'd be willing to make that investment on your own, but it's code that is the problem. Is that right? Did I read?
So right now, Lisa Cutter has a bill going through, it's been to one committee, it's gonna go to another. This isn't gonna come around to 2025, but it could possibly have a board that would create code that would supersede HOA and restrictive covenants. And also, if anyone attended the governor's, we had a town hall with the governor and Nagoos, and they brought this up explicitly that some HOAs are giving people problems to rebuild fire-resistant fences. And you know your HOA, who you are, people are fighting it. We have a lot of discussion about that on the Slack. And we have a recording of the governor saying, I'm watching this, and if we don't get this legislation passed this session, we are doing it next session. We already forbid HOAs from enforcing rules against solar panels and EV stations, and we will do it for fire hardening. It makes no sense. So if you have the ability to put off your fence, or one person I met is going to build it and then let us HOA fight them over it and hope the legislation comes through maybe. But you know, I think those rules are numbered. I mean, their days are numbered, and right. Oh, right. Well, the PUC on what neighborhood are you in? Okay, right. Cornerstone already amended its PUC, so we're allowed to do metal or any kind of fence, really. Just it's restricted by color and height. So you have to get around the PUC, you have to get with Lisa Ritchie and amend it together. Yeah,
But and I'm glad you brought up Lisa Ritchie. I mean, I think staff and folks are very accessible and open to hearing these things. It's just working through the multiple layers of changing things. Oh, sir, hi.
But even aside from that, my understanding is that anybody that had insurance wasn't eligible for FEMA funds, yet the FEMA is giving all of the county funds to do these things. is there a way for all of us to push back either through you or through other means to get them to put in the fencing that everybody lost to help with the fire hardening?
That is news to me. I'd love to chat more about that afterwards. That's new information. Trying to think what FEMA dollars were you referring to? Yeah. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Understood.
Could I quickly ask a question about using the Western States Contracting Alliance? I understand that's been in place since 1993,
Mhm.
and it's includes about 15 states, Western states that can obviously purchase at a reduced
Mhm.
rate or as a group.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, has anybody considered utilizing them
Mhm.
for helping us to purchase things like fencing, for example,
Mhm.
so that we can get a better rate
Mhm.
than we might get otherwise through private vendors or private contractors?
It's a great question. I'm trying to think through the number of states that may have had 2021 fires. I know there were about 4 of us that were on fire in 2020. Yeah, I'm just trying to think how many other states would have been in the same position or are in the same position with homeowners right now. Raina, can we chat about that offline with, maybe reach out to Jennifer Thompson? Yeah, Thompson. Thank you. Yeah. One off, yeah. Economies of scale. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point, Larry. If only we had done that with, what was it called? PEE? No, PPE. Sorry. There's an acronym I've forgotten already. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Raina. Yeah, sorry, just that feels so long ago.
I just have a quick question for folks who were renters or are renters and have smoke damage. I know that the program that Megan spoke about and like going down to the studs and the points, that is for homeowners who have gone down to the studs, et cetera. Hello.
Please begin to plan for the exit. Please get out of here by 8. Thank you.
I don't know if
Part-
everyone
party's
online
over.
heard that, but we just got a 15-minute warning that we have to get out of here. So as long as you all know, it's not me kicking us out. Go ahead, your
Yeah, so
renters.
smoke damage
Yep.
for renters. People are still living in smoke damaged homes because they have no other options.
Yep.
What
Unmet
fund-
needs.
Unmet needs.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah,
Thank you.
unmet needs. And we have approved, I think, some applications that have come through like up to maybe $10,000. But again, that's a kind of a case by case basis and based on like financial need, what insurance did or did not cover. And usually that's for contents, right, Raina? So we're talking contents, not structure. So renters who lost everything to smoke and ash, contents not in ash, definitely apply through unmet needs and we'll take those on a case by case basis depending on the financial situation. Hi, Kate.
I have a question about fencing. I consider that an unmet need right now. I have to replace 4 fences.
That's a lot of money.
Right. And I'm planning on just doing 1 or 2. And I would love my community foundation money to be set aside for my fence, to put it between me and McCaslin. And there's no provisions for me to get that money, put it away until I'm ready to rebuild. It goes to the builder who doesn't do fences, and I would like to have that money just for my fence.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think, are we including fencing in the rebuild costs? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Here, take mine.
As long as we're seeing the proposal and the cost structure, if it's not your builder that's doing it.
We're
if
not
it's
even
separate.
close enough to thinking about the fence. That's going to be next year, the end of next year.
And so let me make sure I understand your situation. You are planning to rebuild.
Yes,
You have not yet applied for Community Foundation rebuild funds.
our permit was just approved today. Yes, we did apply.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Okay. fencing is included in the overall cost of rebuild. And so when you apply, you can use those $20,000 for whatever. When some people are giving it to the person who pours their foundation, some people are just putting it in their escrow account. If you wanted to hold and not submit an invoice to be paid for a year because you want to set that aside for fencing, you are more than welcome to do that.
And that's through the foundation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because today when we were talking to our builder, he said that he will get the money and it has to go towards something, the foundation or whatever. And I said, well, you put up a fence for us. And he said, we don't do fencing.
So that's fine. So we don't have to give it to that builder.
Okay.
It's any vendor. It doesn't have to be your builder. He
But
just
what
wants
if
it.
you run out of money by the time we need to put our fence? I mean, where's the
It's
money
still
gonna
there.
sit?
It's
Under our name or?
if your application is approved,
Mhm.
the disbursement can happen when you're ready for it to the vendor you want it to go to. You are approved. That is protected.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we did our applications, they never asked us about how much it was going to cost to replace the fence.
Yep.
So we need to let them know that.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course. Okay,
think we have an
one more
online-
question and then we've got an online question.
One more question.
I see a hand up here.
Okay.
Burning questions only at this point because we are gonna get kicked out. Sorry.
Well, I'm not sure that these are burning.
Okay.
The first question is, I think there's a structural problem, and this is not the Boulder Community Foundation's to address.
Okay.
If I understand this correctly, governments have delegated to homeowners associations responsibilities that are typically held by government in order to speed development. So the HOA takes on responsibility for building the infrastructure, maintaining the infrastructure, plowing the streets, and things like that. Because being on the board of an HOA is such an incredibly appealing job, you often get not terribly well qualified people in those jobs who bumble their way through it, the best of natures and intentions. And
No one in
most
this
of the
room is on the
time,
board of an
the
HOA, right?
expectations, I'm not talking about my HOA, I'm talking about HOAs in general. And most of the time it doesn't matter because what we ask of our HOAs is pretty trivial. Now we're in a position where the HOA actually needs to have some expertise, some capability, staff, and efficiency. And what I hear through the grapevine is most HOAs don't. And I think this may be a legal remedy for the state, but if there are people involved with Marshall Together or other, I'd be happy to have a brief conversation. The second question I have, early in the presentation, you said 50% of people have rebuild permits, and that's great, and that's twice the national average. What research, what monitoring of our own work are we doing at this point to identify the causes of that that are specific to Louisville and Superior? So we have a community with resources, with education, with social connections, with infrastructure, with community organizations, not necessarily the churches, synagogues, mosques, other. And as a result, we are recovering far faster. But a lot of this is because there are a lot of people, even if they were underinsured, and I know that not everybody is in this position where I've got access to $250,000 if I need it. And that's not the case in most communities. So I think to the extent that we can analyze our experience, we are able to provide lessons to other communities. To the extent that we tout our success without acknowledging our privilege, we run into the case of being an example that other people are just puzzled by.
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. Yes. Right. Yes. Yes to all of that. No, and I appreciate it. But to that point and to this question of what is the infrastructure, right? As a country, as a region, certainly, with respect to climate change, drought conditions, fire tendency, I don't care. But as a country, whether you're in the Southeast and it's hurricanes, or in the Southwest and it's drought, or the Northwest and it's fire, we are facing an uncharted future. And everything that this community is learning and advocating for is being seen on the national scale, is being looked at. Other states are saying, you got to get ahead of this. And you all are doing that work. I think we're all doing it together. I want to say, you know, this is such a tight-knit community. It's why I love this community. We care about each other. We have good faith that everyone is at least trying their best. May not always be the best, but people are trying their best. And so I just want you to know, as your community foundation, we will continue to be in conversation with all of you. You've gotten a sense of where we are, where we're thinking. We'll continue to hear what you have to say and what areas you want us to consider. And know that in our thinking, got 5 minutes. I got my 5-minute warning. They won't chase us out. Okay, good. Thank you. We've run out the side door. You know, in our thinking, we also have to consider if we say yes to something now, does that eliminate the possibility of state or federal or public funding coming through, right? We don't want to preempt public funding. We want to help to fill gaps, but we don't want to preempt it where they go, oh, the community foundation's got it. No, we're good. Okay. So if we move slow, know that it's in the background. We're trying to negotiate. When's the timing of this and when can we move without moving too soon, if that makes sense. One question in the room on the online, please.
Okay, so if there's gonna be one question and it's thematic online, a lot of people submitted questions beforehand, so we want to make sure we honor that. Is why are we prioritizing rebuilding as
Yeah.
part of this fund? And I think
Okay.
that's a large measure of the question.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eric. This is such a, it's a complicated question, but I'm going to start with kind of purpose of charitable funds, right? What is the role of philanthropy? What is the role of donations in the aftermath of an event like this? When people give to a nonprofit organization, we are held to basically, I don't mean to oversimplify it, two things. We are held to making sure that funds are distributed based on need and that funds are distributed to the benefit of the entire community. Okay, based on need and based on for the benefit of the entire community. We're making the argument that everyone, it's incentivizing to whatever extent we can, the rebuilding of homes benefits our entire community because it stabilizes the housing market. It helps to, all of you know what rental prices are right now, right? And they're a lot more than they were before the fire. So how do we start to stabilize that, get our housing stock back? We want to make sure the smoke and ash homes are mitigated appropriately because the long-term health effects to the entire community are huge. What we can't do is just give blanket, like it's not.
Recreation Center will be closing in 5 minutes. Please finish up our activities and make your way to the exit.
So what we can't do is just say, okay, everyone who experienced this event gets $10,000. Because again, if you do the math, I think it's close to 20 actually. We can't do that because it doesn't identify need. And the primary folks who benefit are individuals. It doesn't speak to a community benefit. Resource Central Gardens in a Box, you guys get the gardens, everybody saves on water, right? Same thing, home hardening. Let's talk about that, right? You guys get some protection for your home, everybody gets a mitigation of fire spread in the future, okay? So those are the two lenses that we look at with every single decision. Is there a need under insurance, obviously huge need, and does it benefit the entire community for us to distribute it this way? Any other any other questions in the room? Do you want to give one more to the folks that were online, or do you want to follow up?
When you said the 20 million is being allocated for rebuilding funds and that if other funds are available, they will be, reallocated. Will that be redistributed to the people who rebuilt, or will that just go to other services?
Don't know yet. Don't know the answer to that yet. I think it will depend on if or when, where we are as a community at that point. Yeah. Anyone else online?
Yeah, one question that's come up a lot is why is income part of the qualification?
Why is income part of the qualification? So for rebuild funds, It is not part of the qualification as long as it's not part of the qualification, full stop. If you would like to access the additional $10,000 for LMI, it is part of the qualification. For unmet needs, goes back to what I just said. We have to be able to identify a need. And that's kind of based on your financial situation, and everyone's in a different financial situation. We purposefully did not put an income cap on unmet needs. You will notice that because your income could be $150,000, $200,000 a family, but if you've got liabilities of 70K because you're putting your kids through college and your ALE was next to nothing, we want to consider that, right? But we have to be able to have that information to make those, to meet that question of, is there a need? Yep.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire, here we go.
So this might be for Megan, but another question that's come up a few times is, I'm gonna break ground. And when does the builder receive funds?
Okay, great question. I'm going to answer that if you don't mind, Megan. You've been so generous in answering questions today on behalf of the state. Builder gets funds within like a week. I mean, you guys can turn around things in like a week or two at the latest.
If someone has an appeal, after an original denial, when do they hear back?
I'm guessing that's for the state fund. Go on. So appeals are handled on the order they were received. I'm just repeating it into the microphone for online. Any other rapid fire questions?
Most of the questions were covered in your initial presentation.
Yeah.
But there's this question about what was just followed up with, like, what will happen with remaining allocations? And then some question about like the interest that is accrued on the fund itself.
Yep. Okay. Do folks feel like we answered those pretty sufficiently? Anything from in terms of the unallocated dollars, we will continue to be in conversation with you all. And again, no, we're tweaking these numbers and looking and saying, okay, do we have enough? Do we need to go back to some big donors and get some more? And we're working with state and saying, how much are you willing to put in? And how quickly can you put that in? So this is all an ongoing, dynamic, community-informed process, even if we're not having these conversations every day, okay? Raina and I stopped texting on a weekly basis, and that makes me sad. But there are times when Raina and I are texting on like a multi times a week basis. Okay. And of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us. You're always welcome to give Megan and her team a call. You've got the phone number. And we'll try to do this again at the end of the summer and just have a check-in on where we are at that point. Sound good? Yep. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.